The Riordanverse is a huge universe. It has loads of books with stories that somehow managed to create an insane timeline that I went over in my previous video. From all of these books, fans have gone online and shared many thoughts and even theories on the Riordanverse as a whole. In this video, I thought it would be interesting to go through 10 Riordanverse theories and tier rank them based on how believable they are. I tried doing this for the Hunger Games last time and it was a really fun video to make, so I thought why not do it for the Riordanverse too? But first, let's go through the tiers that I'll be placing these theories in. I'll be using the same tiers from the Hunger Games video, and they are the following. Canon to me for the highest one, believable for the tier of theories that I like but can't really consider as canon, okay for the middle tier, don't like for the theories I don't like, and Octavian made this up for the last tier for theories I don't believe in at all. Last thing before jumping into it, spoiler warning for the Riordanverse. And with that, let's get into it. The first one up here is the Mr. D theory. Now, this is an interesting one. This theory states that the god of wine Dionysus is the reason no one in Camp Haplet has lingering trauma from the many wars or battles that happen in the books. It goes on to explain how we see Mr. D cure Chris Rodriguez's madness in the Battle of the Labyrinth, since Mr. D is also the god of madness. He can give or remove madness, and he even helped Nico D'Angelo cope with the horrors of Tartarus in The Sun and the Star. This theory also points out that we don't see that many demigods have any lingering trauma amidst the insanity and danger that demigods normally experience, and that this was because Mr. D can easily remove it. Okay, so I like the idea of Mr. D helping the campers, but I disagree that he could do this for the whole camp. Like, this theory is trying to state how all demigods don't have trauma at all because Mr. D can just snap his fingers and remove it, like what he did with Chris, and this is where I disagree. Despite being the camp director, Mr. D doesn't really care enough for all the demigods in camp. He doesn't even bother remembering their names or who they are because he's bitter that he's cursed to be there for centuries. Although I'm not denying that Mr. D can remove madness and has helped demigods like Chris or Nico, I don't think this could extend to the whole camp. Demigods like Will Solis or Annabeth Chase, or Leo Valdez, and even Percy Jackson himself had their respective traumas after everything they've been through. I bet this extends to many demigods as well in camp, but Rick Riordan doesn't really focus that much on them to be that seen in my opinion. I think there's also a bunch of traumatized kids in camp because, let's face it, they're just kids in constant war, and I don't think the recovery from all of that would be quickly removed. I can't believe that Mr. D helped them, but saying that all demigods don't have trauma is something that I can't really get behind, which is why I'm placing this in okay. Next is the gods theory. Okay, so let's check this out. This theory states how the gods of Olympus need to have kids because they need people to worship them to stay relevant. Now this is kind of wild. Personally, I also wondered why the gods keep having kids even if they leave them with mortals and they eventually die. Whenever I go online to see thoughts on this, they always end up pointing out the obvious that the gods are just bored and that they get with mortals all the time. Which, okay, fair. I can't deny that. That attitude is pretty much why most myths involve Zeus just getting with anything with a pulse and Hera getting mad at him. Like, it does make sense that the gods could or would fall in love with mortals eventually, because they are immortal. What else do they have to do, right? But this theory points out the idea that they don't have affairs carelessly, but because they need mortals to remember that they're still here and for people to worship them. I'm placing this theory in don't like. I like the idea of the gods trying to stay relevant because we do learn in the Trials of Apollo that if a god is forgotten, they can fade and die out. But I don't really think that having demigod children is the solution. Even in modern times today, mythology is constantly researched or talked about, so they are still pretty relevant. Plus, if having kids with mortals was the only way for them to get worship in the modern world, I bet they'd treat their demigod children way better than they did in the books. Like, think about it. If having a kid and being with mortals was the only way to stay relevant, they try to build more of a relationship with their kids and mortal lovers. I mean, I'm not really trying to say that all gods don't do this, because we've seen gods like Hermes or Poseidon really care about their respective mortal girlfriends, but I bet their relationships would have been better if they knew that this was the only way to engage mortals to worship them. So ultimately, I like the idea, but I don't really think it's believable. Next is the Jason theory. This theory talks about how Jason Grace, a demigod son of Jupiter who died in the Burning Maze, actually went to Hotel Valhalla instead of Elysium. I actually really like this theory, and I'm placing it in believable. I can't place it in canon to me because there's not much evidence to support this. And yes, I'm saying that even if Magnus Chase's first book mentioned Jason in that one chapter. It doesn't make sense that Jason was in Valhalla around this time because that doesn't add up in the timeline. Jason Grace died in The Burning Maze, the third book of the Trials of Apollo, and Magnus Chase's first book, where Jason was mentioned, takes place chronologically alongside the Hidden Oracle, or the first book of the Trials of Apollo. Magnus mentioning Jason was just an Easter egg for readers, and I don't think it's that deep. Hopefully what I mentioned about the timeline makes sense, because if it doesn't, I recommend watching this other video I made a few months ago on the insane Riordanverse timeline. Like, please watch it because I honestly lost a lot of brain cells making that. But anyway, going back to the theory, this talks about Hotel Valhalla, or the place where people called Einherjar go to. Einherjar refers to a group of people who died heroically in battle, and they're recruited to Hotel Valhalla to fight in the end of the world called Ragnarok. So, with that note, some fans have mentioned how Jason may be in Valhalla because he did die bravely in battle. He sacrificed himself to save Piper, Apollo, and Meg, and was obviously a hero, so he does qualify to be in Valhalla. Added to the fact that Nico D'Angelo, a demigod child of Hades, wasn't sure of what happened to Jason's soul after Jason's death, might mean that Jason isn't in Elysium or the realm of the underworld where heroes go to. He might have chosen rebirth instead, but I think I prefer the Hotel Valhalla idea. Jason is a leader and a hero who will choose to fight for the greater good, so I can imagine that if it came down to choosing Valhalla or rebirth, Jason may choose Valhalla. Up next is the Pine Tree Theory. This theory talks about how Zeus, or the king of the gods, wasn't the one who turned Thalia Grace into a pine tree, but that Dionysus was the one who did it. It explains how Zeus was alright with killing kids of the big three to prevent the prophecy, and he probably would have accepted Thalia's death to save so many more lives if the prophecy was right about the end of Olympus. Now, this is a very interesting theory, but I'm placing it in okay. I don't really think there's much evidence to support Mr. D doing this instead of Zeus, but I had to admit that Zeus can be pretty brutal as a leader and as a father. In Greek mythology, he has done pretty messed up things, and I'm not saying Zeus in the PGO series is as messed up, but I can see this happen. However, it's going to okay because I don't think there's as much evidence to support this. After this is the Charmspeak theory. This theory states that Piper used Charmspeak to get Jason to like her, and Jason was never in love with her? Okay, so this is going to Octavian made this up because I absolutely believe that Jason was in love with Piper genuinely. A lot of people dislike Jason and Piper's relationship because of the fake basis of their romance, as Hera did manipulate Piper and Jason's memories. Piper was convinced that she was in love with Jason and the Lost Hero, but they did try to establish something real. It was clear that they did care for one another, and even if they did break up in the Burning Maze, they still trusted each other enough to go on a deadly quest together. Also, this theory is trying to point out how Jason wasn't in love with Piper because Piper just used Charmspeak on him, but I really doubt that. I don't remember any scene of Piper consciously using Charmspeak to get Jason for herself, and Jason did love her. That's so evident if you've read the books, especially in The Burning Maze, when Jason heard of a prophecy that said that he or Piper would die if they go back in the maze. Jason chose to die instead to keep Piper safe, and this was after their breakup. By then, Piper was done with Jason romantically and wouldn't be using Charmspeak on him at all, so Jason chose this with his own free will. In the Tower of Nero, Jason even tells Apollo that he doesn't regret what he did and is at peace with it, so this further proves that Jason actively chose to die for Piper. Ultimately, this theory is going to the bottom tier to me. Next is the name theory. Alright. This theory cites how the PGO series explains that names have power, and that people refrain from mentioning names because they're important and may have consequences if you're disrespectful. This also goes on about how Percy slowly became more and more powerful in the books because a lot of people talk about him and mention his name, therefore empowering Percy even more because names have power. This is going to okay because the names have power idea isn't as consistent in the books. It's most present in PGO, but the Heroes of Olympus and the Trials of Apollo series kind of dropped it. We have characters mentioning gods and monsters all the time without that much fear anymore, so although I like the idea that Percy is a powerful demigod because of the influence and how prominent his name is, I don't think there's much evidence to support this, so I'm placing it here. Up next is the crossover theory. This theory talks about how the Riordanverse is about to have a huge crossover throughout different mythologies because of the ending of the Tower of Nero. There, Chiron was in a meeting with a severed head, aka Mimir from the Magnus Chase trilogy, and a cat lady or boss from the Kane Chronicles. This was such a good Easter egg moment for fans like me when I read the Tower of Nero, but I don't know if Rick is currently planning a huge crossover. I mean, we've seen Apollo mention gods from other pantheons constantly throughout the Trials of Apollo, and we even see Easter eggs in the Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase. Magnus mentions Jason Grace in that one chapter of the Sword of Summer, and Carter Kane swore that he saw a black Pegasus once, and this was most probably a shout out to Blackjack. These moments are great for fans, and if this theory is real, I would love a book series on that. So I'm placing this in believable. Next is the Bianca theory. This theory talks about how Bianca D'Angelo, a demigod daughter of Hades and Nico's older sister, had chosen rebirth and was reincarnated in Estelle Blofeld. Now, this is a really random one, but I find it sweet enough to place it in okay. We do know that Bianca had chosen rebirth in the underworld, but we don't really know anything else about it. I think it's sweet to see Bianca reincarnated as Estelle Blofeld or Percy's little sister, but I don't think it's that likely. So I'm placing this in okay. Alright, we're almost done here. After the Bianca theory is the Zeus theory. So this theory points out that Zeus had attempted to kill Nico and Bianca because he was angry that Hades disobeyed him, and he didn't care if Nico and Bianca died because they could have brought destruction to Olympus. It goes on to say that Zeus may have tried to kill other demigod children under the age of 16 of the big three just to avoid the prophecy, and supports the idea that Zeus didn't save Thalia but Mr. D did. Now, this is just brutal and pretty dark, but I do get where it's coming from. Zeus has been brutal a lot of times in mythology, and I don't know what to think about him killing other kids just because they could bring the end of the world. It's dark, but honestly something I can believe. So I'm placing this in believable. And last but not the least is the mist theory. Okay, so this theory explains how the mist is actually chaos or the primordial void that started the universe. This is actually going to canon to me because I really like this idea. The mist pretty much controls what mortals can see whenever supernatural events happen, and a being as powerful as chaos could manifest itself through the mist in the mortal world. It's a really cool theory and something that I can get behind. And those are all the theories I'll tier rank in this video. So how about you? Do you know any more theories in the Riordanverse? Let me know in the comments down below.